We are back. Peanut Gallery is going to talk about the pure rules as a part of professional wrestling for his Bible study. Peanut Gallery, take it away.
All right, so I thought for the first time in like 2 months I would talk about a character in professional wrestling. But let's talk about a match type that has been increasingly popular within certain wrestling circles. We're going to talk about what is quoted as pure rules in Ring of Honor. Now, if you are a historian of professional wrestling like myself and the illustrious Tiger Hike here, you'll know that the very specific rules about pure wrestling have almost nothing to do with the actual pure sport of wrestling itself. Let me give you a small history as to what the Pure Championship represented. So the Pure Championship was actually one of the original titles within Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. It was defended from 2002 until about 2006. It was unified with the ROH World Champion between Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson. The Pure Championship was brought back about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I read this interesting article from Sports Illustrated with Jonathan Gresham. And this was after he had defeated Tracy Williams in the championship round of the 16-person tournament, restoring the belt once worn by the likes of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Bryan Danielson. And the most interesting thing to me is that it reintroduced a style of technical wrestling that once defined Ring of Honor. So, pure wrestling may not necessarily be an old style of wrestling. Like, these rules, they don't exist outside of Ring of Honor's rules. You have certain things like the 20 count outside the ring that's popular in Japan. But you see a lot of other rules within a pure wrestling match that are not necessarily matches, that are not necessarily rules that were used in the far past. The intention of the pure wrestling match was to reintroduce a style of wrestling that Jonathan Gresham and many people agreed was lost within the Ring of Honor. Now, Jonathan Gresham said that I was always gravitated to the Ring of Honor because of its style and presentation, but over the years it moved away from what it was. Stylistically, everything changed, and the main guys in the company changed. I decided to stick with it, and I stayed persistent. Ring of Honor is all about sport. It's a genre of pure wrestling. So, essentially, it's bringing the style of that technical aspect of professional wrestling back into the forefront. And so the rules kind of reflected that era, I guess. And if you know anything about the history of technical wrestling, that literally was a style of wrestling that amateur wrestlers used when they were transitioning into the pro wrestling scene. So you can argue that it is a more, quote, pure style of wrestling because it is, in many people's opinion, the closest to Greco-Roman wrestling that you can get, which, of course, is...
Without it being actual
right.
Greco-Roman wrestling.
So, the Pure Championship was different than the other titles in wrestling. It carries 3 distinct rules. And if you watch Ring of Honor, the 3 rules that make it distinct are the 3 rope breaks per match. And once those are used, pinfalls and submissions under the ropes then become legal. No closed fists to the face are permitted. And there's a 20 count by the referee once the wrestler hits the floor. So, let's talk a little bit more about these 3 rules that make it unique. The 20 count is the most obvious because it's actually a style that is still used in Japan. There is no precedent in the United States for a 20 count. It's always been a 10 count. So I find it interesting that they allow more time outside of the ring for a, quote, pure wrestling rules match. But the other 2 rules harken back to a day where there were no ring ropes. So, for example, the 3 rope breaks per match, when there were no ring ropes, there were obviously no rope breaks. And so a technical style of wrestling works very well under that rule because you might be allowed a limited number of rope breaks per match, but at some point in time, you're going to have to give that up. And then we also talk about the closed fist to the face. Very popular. That actually was one of the things that differentiated professional wrestling from shoot-style fights, was the fact that there were no closed fists. So, in essence, what Ring of Honor was trying to do was to bring back a style that was more reminiscent of the Greco-Romans that were popular with people like Daniel Bryan, that were popular with people like AJ Styles. And it also was a brand that defined the Ring of Honor as it was at that time. And when you take the rules away, so we're going back to what Gresham says. When you take the rules away from professional wrestling, there's no story, no heels or faces. We need rules for people to get up in arms over something. Every sport, fans yell at refs for missing technicalities of rules. Wrestling doesn't have that anymore. It's so easy to tell stories with technical wrestling that goes deeper than fireworks or cool moves or title changes. Everything is so instant. So this is a different flavor of ice cream, a different identity for Ring of Honor. So you think about someone like Jonathan Gresham, and you think about he is part of that foundation, literally and figuratively, of not only that division, but of Ring of Honor itself. I mean, you can argue that he's one of the most influential modern-day performers. Of course, he's not the Jay Lethal founding father figure, but he definitely has defined an era. And some people think that technical wrestling is slow and boring, but there are so many different styles of technical wrestling. There is the swift and quick style lucha libre, like Negro Navarro or Blue Demon Jr., as opposed to the Karl Gotch style that was popular in Japan, which is mixed in with Antonio Inoki hard strikes. The British have the Lancashire style, and the Americans have the American style mixed in with mixed martial arts. So when he was referring back to the tournament, Jonathan Gresham was referring back to those alternate styles of technical wrestling that were missing from what is and remains to be kind of that mainstream. And so Gresham had this vision of Ring of Honor as being this kind of like, you have this more pure style of wrestling. So that's why this tournament was reintroduced, was to really have this style come back into the limelight. And Gresham, if you have seen him wrestle, he really embodies that style of submissions, holds, ground kind of technicality that you kind of expect from the likes of Daniel Bryan, that you expected from people like Chris Benoit. I mean, there are a lot of people that embody that sort of technical ground, not ground and pound, but just that ground style that differentiated them from the rest of the people within that style. And so, ultimately, Gresham's goal is to restore honor to the whole industry. That's not exclusive to the Ring of Honor. And so, when everyone sees the pure technical wrestlers and how they have been kind of cast away to the side, what Jonathan Gresham with the pure division is really all about is reintroducing those rules, that pure style. And it's not even about the rules, it's about the style of wrestling that they're trying to reintroduce into the industry. So the pure championship and those rules that have been unique to that pure championship, they encourage a style of wrestling that I think is lost in the limelight between the spot fests that we see with the Young Bucks and the high flyers that we see with the luchadors and the powerhouses that we see in the WWE and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that Ring of Honor really has a chance to make the most of the pure rules to kind of bring us back to that ground level of what is pure wrestling. Anything to add?
Honestly, no. I think there was a lot of great explanation of what it was and the significance of it, because we really saw this. And, obviously coming up when we talk about the 19th anniversary, We definitely saw this difference, and honestly, I think I saw a lot more of that traditional pure wrestling with the NWA show, too. So, obviously, I think that's kind of why it was predestined for us to talk about these together. So, when we come back, I will be talking about the history of Ring of Honor as a promotion.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some...
All right.